Hey all out there, thank you for watching my Guardians of the Galaxy review yesterday. If you haven't checked that out though already, feel free to go to my channel. Now, as promised yesterday, here is my DVD and Blu Ray collection. Right, now, of course, as you can tell, I've been watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, still a fantastic movie, probably one of my favourites. Well, definitely my favourite movie of all time because it's one I grew up with. So we'll start with that on Steelbook Blu-ray. Not sure if you could quite see it. Apologies for the lighting right now. I haven't had time to sort it because it's still broad daylight, so can't do much about that. As you can tell, this is a limited edition Steelbook Blu-ray. I tend to hate Steelbooks, but this one was pretty cool to get finally here in the UK on a release. Now, of course, next I have on Blu-ray is Back to the Future, the trilogy on Blu-ray. Fantastic trilogy, definitely recommend it. I mean, I think every person on Earth has at least seen this once. Okay, so that's that. Now, next movie. As a lot of people know, I'm a huge Queen fan, so of course I have to own Flash Gordon on Blu-ray. Funny film. It's terrible, you know, but the soundtrack kind of makes up for it, and the cool thing is this does actually come with it. So yeah, that's Flash. Now, this used to be my favourite movie of all time until I really thought about it. So of course I do have it on Blu-ray. This is Highlander, the original with Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery. Absolutely groundbreaking film, cult film for its time, and it's just really cool to see, you know, what filmmaking was like when they actually had to use practical effects back then. Now, this next movie is a bit of a guilty pleasure. I don't own the other sequels on Blu-ray, mainly because they're terrible and aren't available here in the UK, so that's a win-win. But this is my favourite sequel of the Highlander trilogy, or the Highlander saga, if you will, and that is Highlander Endgame. Yes, there's a lot of problems with this film, quite a lot of plot holes, but it's the most coherent sequel to the original, in my opinion. Now, continuing on with the music theme, of course, you had the Queen soundtracks for that film, apart from Highlander Endgame, of course. We now move on to another great music icon that released two films, one of them posthumously, but the first one is Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. Very confusing film. I'm going to say that straight away, because you're not sure like where they're going with this, really, and it's, you know, it's just a strange film, really, but it's a guilty pleasure that's a lot of fun to watch. Check out the Nostalgia Critics review on it if you really want to laugh. Now, of course, I did say there was two films in this collection, and the second one is This Is It, which is, of course, the rehearsal footage that was turned into a movie. It was compiled from like 1,000 hours, I think. So, yeah, really cool and really worth checking out if you get the chance, if you haven't seen it already. And it's interesting to see Michael's final rehearsals on that. I'll just throw that out there. Okay, now we move on to the random DVDs that aren't really in any order. There are a few Blu-rays in here as well, which I'll get to eventually. But, you know, I'll start off with the best Liam Neeson movie of all time, and that is Taken. Just a brilliant movie, love it to death, and this is the extended cut as well. You know, this is probably one of my top 10 action movies of all time. Okay, so just put that there. Now, next film on my list, if you'll excuse me, because the disc is popping out. This is going to be totally unedited, I'm just, you know, riffing here. But Bruce Almighty, Jim Carrey's best performance, in my opinion. You know, I also love him in The Mask, but we'll get to that in a bit. So yes, brilliant film. Now, these next two films, well, next three actually, I haven't watched in a while. The third for a very good reason, but I have it just because it's unfortunately part of the trilogy. But this is the Mummy Collection. Very rare to get a hold of this DVD now, actually, but it's really cool because it kind of has like the sundial key in it, and when you open it up, it just looks really, really cool. This is for The Mummy and The Mummy Returns. Two great films if you ever get the chance. Really worth seeing. And of course I do own, unfortunately, The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, just because it's part of the trilogy, but I have never watched it since I bought it on DVD. Okay, right. Next in the collection, like I said, this is just going to be random from now on. There's a few that are tied together because they're direct sequels or part of the franchise, but I've got to start off with this one, and that is Inception. One of Christopher Nolan's best movies after The Dark Knight. It's just such a groundbreaking movie, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Really think it's fantastic. Really worth watching if you ever get the chance. I might do a review on that soon, actually. And next is The Nutty Professor. One of Eddie Murphy's best comedies, it's got to be said. And I thoroughly enjoy this movie to this day. It hasn't aged, unlike the next one in my list, which is Nutty Professor 2: The Clumps. Again, only have this movie because it's part of the franchise, but it's got some funny moments and some interesting ideas that just don't get fully realised. So, nah, I'd normally pass on that. Okay, right, wow. On to the next part. Now, this is my Christmas films for the next 3. I have a few others, but they're currently in storage right now, so I haven't had time to dig them out. But of course, one of my favourite Christmas movies of all time, next to the Santa Claus, The Muppets Christmas Carol. I mean, come on, who does not love this movie? It's the first time you actually see Michael Caine in a role and don't see Michael Caine. It's very cool to see. Let's just put that there. And next film is Jack Frost. Kind of an underrated Michael Keaton film, if I'm honest. It's very interesting. Of course, it deals with his death and the fact he's able to come back as a snowman. Tiny spoiler alert. Might do a review of this over the Christmas period, actually, this year. I don't know yet. I'll check my schedule as it gets nearer to time. And last Christmas movie in this collection here is How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Jim Carrey version. Again, just a performance from Jim Carrey you don't expect. And again, funny review from the Nostalgia Critic, and for that reason, this is one movie I won't review, but it's interesting to see, and it's pretty cool. Okay, on to the next pile. I'm really getting through here. In tribute to the late Bob Hoskins, his best film, in my opinion, and one of the greatest mixing live action with animation films, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. If you don't have this movie in your collection, I just have to ask why. It's a really great film and really worth watching if you ever get the chance. I'm definitely got that on the review schedule over the next couple of months. Now, of course, if you're like me, a 90s kid, and you loved basketball, you love Michael Jordan, and of course you gotta have Space Jam in your collection. It's just the done thing, which is, it's a guilty pleasure for me. How does, just a great film. I have a lot of happy memories now watching this movie occasionally with my nephew, and he loves it as well, and he's only 5. Okay, now moving on to the Robin Williams collection I used to have a lot more, but unfortunately, in recent times, due to financial restraints and everything, I had to get rid of a couple, but this is what I still have salvaged. Of course, I'm going to start with my favourite Robin Williams movie of all time, the very first review I did on this channel, and of course it is Mrs. Doubtfire. I still laugh at this movie to this day. I just watched it a couple of days ago again, and it never ceases to amaze me just how brilliant this film is. It's definitely in my top 10 list. If not, no, actually it's in my top 3. I'd say it's probably my number 3, my 3rd favourite film of all time. Okay, so that's that. And now, of course, continuing in Robin Williams's style, this is Jumanji, my 2nd favourite Robin Williams film, actually. I have not actually seen this film in a lot of years, though. mainly because I've just been busy with other stuff and haven't really had the time to sit down and watch it again, but I probably will soon because I'd love to review this one day. And of course, with these Robin Williams films, you gotta talk about this next one, Hook. Just such an underrated movie, and you gotta love it. I kind of class it as a sequel to Peter Pan, like kind of like what happens at the end of the story, because we don't really know, and this kind of really fills the void. And of course, it's directed by Steven Spielberg, who has very rarely done a bad film in his career. So again, check that out if you ever get the chance. Okay, now the last movie in my Robin Williams collection, sadly. And in my opinion, this is the most underrated film he ever did. Again, the Nostalgia Critic did a hilarious review on this. So, but I might actually do one day. Because I feel that this movie needs to be addressed for all its heartfelt moments as well as its, interesting comedy, which is the least to be said, which is Jack, where of course he's a 10-year-old trapped in a 40-year-old's body. And again, it's, they do get some of the concepts wrong, as Doug Walker, as the Nostalgia Critic, already pointed out, but it's really cool, and the speech he gives at the end is so much more poignant now since his death, where he's class valedictorian. Really worth checking out if you ever get the chance. Okay, now we're just moving on to like random DVDs I have in my collection here. There is one trilogy of films here which I've set apart from my other films of this particular actor, which I'll get to in a second. But I'm going to start off with Bringing Down the House. One of the most unlikely comedies. This got slated when it came out, and personally I'd love to know why, because in my opinion, it was just a brilliant comedy, and it was nice to see Steve Martin play this kind of role that was kind of akin to the Father of the Bride days, which is another two great films. And next is my personal favourite biopic movie of all time. And okay, some stuff had to be changed, but just to see into this guy's life in a movie way was done brilliantly, even if the guy who played Buddy Holly was just awful. I hate to say it, but he was. As you've probably guessed it, this is La Bamba. Very underrated film, but so fantastically done. I cannot stress enough how well this one was done. And Lou Diamond Phillips just steals the show in this movie. So please, 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 if you ever get the chance, watch this. And I'm definitely got this on the review list for either later this year or early next. And the second best biopic film I've ever seen, winner of 2 Academy Awards, including Best Actor for Jamie Foxx, Ray. It's just a fantastic film to see, because you really see the struggles that Ray Charles went through during his early life and during his early career. So please, please, please check that out if you haven't already. Okay, we're getting on to the second trilogy of films here. And actually, these are the only 2 franchise films, to my memory, apart from Project A, that this actor did. That is Jackie Chan, of course. I do have the Rush Hour trilogy. So that's 1, 2, and 3. 3 very funny films, really worth watching. I laugh my butt off every time. Even at the third one, which is very underrated, it got really slated, which is a shame. And a lot of people are wondering if they're going to do a 4th one. We don't know, but come on, Jackie. Please give us Rush Hour 4 and at least finish this franchise. Chris Tucker wants to do it. Brett Ratner wants to do it. Please give us this, and then you can happily retire from action films, but please just give us a Rush Hour 4 and make it better than 3 was. Okay, the next 2 films, in the only films that Jackie Chan's ever done in a franchise as far as I know, apart from the Police Story films as well, which I'll get to later, Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights, which also features Owen Wilson in both these films. And in my opinion, they're two of his best performances. It's just funny to see him play this outlaw. So yeah, really worth watching. Please do if you get the chance. Again. Now, we're moving on to the spoof films here that I have in my collection. Now, spoof films, of course, are, they're meant to be a mixtape. And I'm going to start off with two Mel Brooks classics. Number one being, in my opinion, the best Robin Hood film, because it's just so funny. And he is the only Robin Hood that can speak with an English accent so far. And that is Robin Hood, Men in Tights. If you've never seen this film, get up off your butt, go out and either rent it or buy it, and just have a good time with it, because that's what this movie is. It's a really good time. Okay, next movie in my parody list is another Mel Brooks classic. And I've special shout out to my friend Kevin in Arizona, who recommended this film to me, and the next one that I'm about to put up in just a few seconds as well. But Spaceballs, just a bloody funny film, bloody brilliant as well. I just really enjoy this film every time I watch it. The Schwartz, it's just so cool to see, and really worth checking out if you ever get the time. Okay, and the last movie in my spoof film collection, which I do have on Blu-ray actually. Of course, this is again thanks to my friend Kevin, who's my lead singer in this new band I'm actually working on at the moment, which is This Is Spinal Tap. If you've never seen this film, then I'm afraid you've just been living under a rock. Check this out by all means. I'm not even going to I'm not going to review it because it's that brilliant, and I feel that the only way to truly appreciate this film is if you just see it, and if no one actually just reviews it. It's one of those films you have to see, but no one can really talk about. It's really cool that way though. Anyway, and now moving on to a couple of more franchise films. This is moving on to more of the music section of my DVD and Blu-ray collection. If I just make that DVD. But of course I have to own The Blues Brothers. Funniest comedy ever by John Landis. And of course stars Dan Aykroyd and the late John Belushi. And is just a brilliant film from start to finish. I love this film to bits. And I cannot recommend this film enough to people. I might actually review it one day. Now of course, those of you who saw my first Bad Movie Month know I unfortunately own this movie. But again, because it's part of the franchise, I kind of had to get it. But this is Blues Brothers 2000. Less said the better. I hate that film. Now, of course, keeping in tradition with the music style films. Very underrated film directed by Tom Hanks and written by him. Not a lot of people know about this one. That Thing You Do. Kind of a parody take on the Beatles, but done in a new way, and that's what makes it so interesting. Yeah, it's a cliched rags to riches story, then back to rags again, but very worth it. And the extended cut as well is just so much better as well, because you get a lot more of the dynamics between the band and why things actually happened the way they did. So yeah, really worth checking out. And now this is definitely in my top 5 films that I've ever seen, and I don't normally recommend, highly recommend a film for people to see, and this is one I definitely want to review within the coming weeks, and that is Rockstar, starring Mark Wahlberg and Jennifer Aniston. Just solid performances. It's meant to be loosely based on the replacement singer that they briefly had in Judas Priest, but it's just such a cool movie, and there's a lot of heart to it as well, especially near the end. And the moral of the story kind of is after you've finally got everything you ever wanted, where do you go from there? And of course the last movie in my music rock collection, if you will. Of course I have to have this as a music fan, primarily, and that is School of Rock, starring Jack Black. But it's also his best ever performance that he's ever done. Such a funny movie. Just great soundtrack, great comedic timing. And the kids are really talented in this movie as well. If you get the chance, go on YouTube. Well, obviously after you've watched this, type in on YouTube School of Rock 10-year reunion, and you will your jaw will literally hit the floor. It's just really cool. And of course, I'm just going to put that there. Now, these next couple of movies are again uncompleted at the moment because these films haven't finished being released yet. And that is, of course, The Hunger Games and The Hunger Games Catching Fire. I was blown away by how original these films were and how it was interesting to see a female protagonist in a movie like this. Well, in a movie series like this. And I'm definitely looking forward to the last two. And I really look forward to seeing Mockingjay near the end of this year. Now, last movie in that pile is Prisoners. Absolutely brilliant, fantastic original film. It's nice to see Hollywood do such an original idea as this. If you have not seen this movie, I cannot stress how brilliant it is, and how the ending just is completely mind-blowing and really original, because it doesn't quite end without giving it away. It's an ending, but it doesn't actually quite end the story the way you want it to. So yeah, really worth watching, but it is a very nerving film to watch. So it's probably advisable that you watch this with someone who understands this kind of film. Now, moving on to the next pile. Again, this is just a mishmash of mix. Some of them are franchise films and ones that I've just cobbled together, basically. And of course, I'm going to start off with A Time to Kill. Joel Schumacher's best film ever. Forget the crap that was Batman and Robin. This is back when the guy could direct a brilliant movie. Now, moving on. James Cameron's most underrated movie, but I have it in my collection. I have barely watched it since I first saw it, though, and that is Avatar. Yeah, there is a lot of cliched moments in this film, and it's very unoriginal, but you got to appreciate the special effects in this film, even if the human elements aren't that brilliant. Now, of course, next film, one of my favourite Will Smith movies. I'm just going to cut right to it. Hancock. This is probably a movie that you could make a porno out of and just not change the title. There, I said it. So yeah, very well worth checking out if you ever get the chance, if you haven't already. Now, I've got a few Arnold Schwarzenegger films here. I'm going to start off with one of the more recent ones I have before he went into office, The Sixth Day. Very underrated Arnie film, in my opinion. It's got it. It's very cliched, with the explosions, but there is a lot of twists in it that you just don't see coming, which is very cool to see for back then. Put that there. Now, this is quite possibly my favourite Arnold Schwarzenegger performance outside... No, actually, it's my second favourite Arnold Schwarzenegger performance outside of the Terminator franchise, and that is Total Recall. I had to do that, I apologise. Total Recall, fantastic film, really worth watching if you haven't already. Ignore the remake by all means and just keep to the original. Get to the chopper! Just fantastic movie. Please watch it if you ever get a chance. Wait, Get to the Chopper was Predator. I do apologise. Now, this next movie is really a guilty pleasure, but I won't bother with the sequel because it is just one of those films I blank point refuse to own, like the remake of RoboCop. Ooh. And that is Mortal Kombat. Just a really interesting video game movie. And it does kind of get the concept right in it. I mean, the acting's hokey. I'm not gonna lie about that, but it's really worth checking out if you ever get the chance, even for a guilty pleasure reason. Okay, next movie is a Bill Murray classic in my opinion, which is Groundhog Day. Very good film, really enjoyed it. In fact, I do have the Ghostbusters 1 and 2 in my collection, but again, that's in storage, so unfortunately I couldn't dig it out for this. But you never know, I might update the collection at some point. But yeah, really worth watching. It's an interesting comedy, to say the least. Now, this is one of the only romantic comedy films I have in my collection, because it's one of the only ones I can actually stand. And that is, in my opinion, this is Adam Sandler's best performance, and it also stars Drew Barrymore, 50 First Dates. Very interesting concept, very original, really worth checking out if you ever get the chance. I seem to say that a lot, which I apologise for. Now, this film got really slated when it came out, but at the end of the day, it's a family film, and it's really worth watching just for how awesome Jackie Chan is in it. And that is Around the World in 80 Days. Just a great film. Well, I wouldn't say great. It's okay, you know, it's nothing brilliant. Never going to win an Oscar. But really worth watching if you ever get the chance. And it actually features Arnold Schwarzenegger's last role before he went into political office as the governor of California. Now, this next movie is probably the most underrated in my collection. Now, this only just came out last year. I saw it when I was on the way to San Diego to see my sister and my niece and nephew. And when I was on the plane, because there was nothing else really worth watching that really piqued my interest. So I thought, I'll take a risk and actually watch this. And I really did like this movie. And that is The Incredible Burt Wonderstone. Now, oh no, unsubscribe. I can see what you guys are going to be like already. He has that movie. Oh no, we mustn't watch him anymore. Please. Really worth watching. You know, a very interesting Jim Carrey performance, I gotta say. Even if his storyline isn't really resolved by the end, he is kind of just there throughout the film. You know, it's like, where's my paycheck, damn it? And you know, it's just interesting to see, really, and that's all I gotta say. Okay, now we're moving on to, like, almost the last 4 piles I have now. But I've got to talk about this film. This film is my favourite Pixar movie outside of the Toy Story franchise. And that is Finding Nemo. Just... this movie pulls at your heartstrings like no tomorrow. And if you have not seen this movie, and if you don't even get a little bit emotional, then I'm sorry, but you're just a stone for a film like this. But really worth, honestly, fantastic movie. Now, next movie in my list is kind of a weird one for, I guess, for someone like me to have, but it's always interested me, and that is JFK. Now, a lot of problems are had in this movie, but it's interesting to see like how the investigation happened around the time of John F. Kennedy's assassination. So, worth checking out if you like that sort of thing. Now, this next movie is an underrated Jim Carrey movie, actually. I think it fared pretty well at the box office, but I think it succeeded more on DVD, and that is Yes Man. Very interesting film. It's kind of, I'd actually say it's one of the last true comedy movies that Jim Carrey did in his sort of style. You know, before he started moving on to things like Mr. Popper's Penguins, but that we'll get into at a later time. So, yeah, really worth watching if you ever get the chance. Okay, the next couple of movies in my collection is all 4 theatrically released American Pie movies. Now, of course, these movies came out around the time... well, the first 3 came out around the time I was a teenager. And, of course, I had to watch these films. In fact, I remember I was... oh, gosh, I must have... see, 2003... So I was 15. And I remember going with my dad to see American Pie the Wedding and feeling incredibly awkward throughout the whole thing. So, you know, a little interesting fact for you there. And, of course, a couple of years ago, I went to see American Reunion, or as they call it here in the UK, American Pie Reunion. And I really found it interesting, I have to say, because it was kind of like peeking into the future, because, you know, in about 5 or 10 years, I'll hopefully be, you know, married with a couple of kids and, you know, very settled down. And, you know, there probably will be a school reunion at some point where we're all like that, but we're all going to have that friend who still wants to act like the same way we all did in high school. So, yeah, very interesting film if you ever get a chance. Now, the next comedy movie I have in this collection is The 40-Year-Old Virgin. One of Steve Carell's best performances, it has to be said. The way he plays this is really interesting, to say the least. And it is all about this quest for a 40-year-old man to lose his virginity. And really worth watching. Very funny film. I might actually do a review on that at some point when I get time. Now, next movie in my list is another Jim Carrey classic, and that is Liar Liar. Just a really interesting performance from him. And, you know, it's kind of truthful as well, because if you could only tell the truth 24 hours a day, well, for a whole day, you would go this nuts as he does in this film. So it was, again, an original concept that was interesting to see. Hollywood, please make more original ideas and stop rehashing the same thing over and over. Okay, next trilogy of films. I got this in one collection, but yeah, baby, it's the Austin Powers collection, and that impression was terrible. I really apologise. This is the Shagadelic box, which contains all 3 films. There's been talk of a 4th film, but it's like, yeah, is it actually going to happen? To be honest, after how bad the 3rd one was, I hope not. Now, quite an interesting film to have in my collection. I seem to be going through a lot of interesting films lately. Has to be Casper. It's basically a horror movie for kids. And it's pretty cool, I have to say, you know, very underrated. Features, you know, Christina Ricci back when she was in quite a few movies. She doesn't do a lot now, which is really strange. But really worth watching if you ever, you know, it was pretty good. Again, watch the Nostalgia Critics review. I know I seem to be recommending him a lot in this video. And of course, DreamWorks' answer to Toy Story, but I had to get it anyway. Small Soldiers, guilty pleasure movie, I have to say. You know, it's bizarrely rated a 12, maybe for some of the graphic imagery in it, but aside from that, interesting movie, to say the least. Very interesting. Now, these next 2 movies I have on Blu-ray, and yes, this one's a musical, but it's one of the most powerful musical movies ever put on film. Adapted from the book to the stage play, and now adapted from the stage play to the silver screen. Les Miserables. Just an interesting film, although I will say this, you know, I like Hugh Jackman, think he's a fantastic actor. I've seen him in a lot of films. But it should have been Alfie Boe to play Jean Valjean. He is just the best Jean Valjean I've ever seen in my life. So, you know, just my opinion. And they could have got someone better than Russell Crowe to play Javert for singing chops. That's all I'm saying. And next movie in my list, I rated it as number 2 in my top 10 films of 2013. Obviously, last year. Pacific Rim. It is such a shame this film bombed the way it did, but thankfully Guillermo del Toro is working on a sequel, and I really hope that one does better. I really do, and I hope it's a good story as well to go with this one. Again, original idea. Apart from the fact it was like Power Rangers meets Transformers meets Godzilla. But apart from that, great original idea. Looking forward to more. Okay, next couple of films is kind of an oddball. You know, it kind of has that B-movie style to it, if you will. But I'll start off with The Mask of Zorro. Now, again, interesting film. Very underrated, actually. It's, you know, but it's a really interesting film to see. Now, the next movie, by no means brilliant at all. You know, it's, in fact, it's, you know, I'd say it's one of my least favourite sequels of all time. But again, it's part of the franchise, so I have to have it. The Legend of Zorro. Just such a shame it took him so long to come out with a sequel, and it didn't quite pay off, really. Now, we move on to an interesting comedy trilogy. Again, I don't like romantic comedy films, but I don't really regard these as that because it goes against a lot of the traditional romantic comedy cliches. And that, of course, is Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers, and the most underrated film of the lot that got really slagged off when it first came out, but Little Fockers. So yeah, that's that. Now, we're moving on to some more of my Jackie Chan films here. I think there is more in the collection, but I'm just going to ban these out as quick as I can. Mr. Nice Guy. And then, of course, I have Police Story 1. Police Story 2. Unfortunately, I don't have 3 because it's not been released here in the UK yet, which is a real shame. So, please, if anyone is watching this who is attached to Hong Kong Legends, please release Police Story 3 over here in the UK. And of course, what is technically Police Story 4, but it's just called First Strike for some weird reason here in the UK. Jackie Chan's First Strike. Great film, really enjoy it, worth watching. And of course, I do have as well New Police Story, which is just a really interesting difference for Jackie Chan. So, worth watching if you get time. Okay. And of course, the last action film that he says he's going to do, but he has come out lately with New Police Story, which is yet to have a UK release, which is probably another 2 years away, like this film was. Chinese Zodiac, and it features a really cool cover as well, actually. Just came out last Monday on DVD, finally, here in the UK. And yet to watch this one all the way through, but this is one I definitely have planned to review within the next week. So, yeah. Okay, now we're on the last 3 piles, thankfully. And of course, we have, right here, Terminator. Terminator 2, the best sequel of all time. Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, which is okay. It's not brilliant, but it's okay. And again, Terminator Salvation, not a bad film, but not brilliant, really, but worth watching if you do like the Terminator franchise. And all 4 films are actually on my channel as reviews if you want to check them out. Now, next, you know, big franchise. You know, I do have the extended editions on Blu-ray, but I'm waiting to collect them all to actually put it all together. And you've already seen me review the extended edition Blu-rays as my 50th video on this channel for Lord of the Rings. But I'm going to start off with the 2 prequels, The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, and The Desolation of Smaug. I'm really looking forward to the Battle of the Five Armies this Christmas that will finally complete this trilogy. Now, of course, I do have the theatrical release DVDs of Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King. Just one of the most perfect movie trilogies ever done, even if they are over 3 hours long. Okay, next 2 movies for me are... If you ever had guilty pleasure movies, these will definitely be 2 of them. and that is Sister Act and Sister Act 2 Back in the Habit. The most underrated sequel of all time, in my opinion. And of course, next two movies, Extreme Close Up! Wow! That's as far as I can go. But of course, Wayne's World 1 and 2. And of course, I already showed the Blu-ray, but of course I also have Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure on DVD, as well as Bogus Journey, and I'm still waiting for Bogus Journey to actually be released on Blu-ray here in the UK. I'm not sure if it has in the States or not, but just two very fantastic films. Talking of two great films, The Expendables 1 and 2. I have not seen Expendables 3, but after seeing a lot of other reviewers and see how they're like very in the middle about it, I don't think I want to see it, if I'm honest. I'm just going to stick to the first two, I think. But I might get the third one when it comes out on DVD. I don't know yet. Now, these next two films are, in my opinion... Excuse me. These next two films, in my opinion, are Arnold Schwarzenegger's most underrated films. Both of them bombed at the box office, and I'd love to know why. You know, it just makes me wonder, are people getting tired of 80s action films now, and if so, why? But the first one is The Last Stand, which was his official return on his own to the cinema screen after being in office for so many years. And the next one, unfortunately, I did not see this when it originally came out in cinemas. But this is Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger finally in a movie together, Escape Plan. Just such a different, interesting, original at that as well, movie. So really worth watching, very underrated. Please check it out if you ever get the chance. Now the next movie in my collection is another Arnie classic, my second favourite performance from him. Is very underrated, got very slated. It bombed like hell when it first came out, and I'd love to know why. But Last Action Hero, this is a true popcorn movie if there ever was one. You know, you can just see it now. You know, you've had a hard working week, you bung some popcorn in the oven, and you put this movie on. It's just the done thing. And next movie in my Schwarzenegger collection is The Running Man. Just a very interesting film from him, because it has quite a few Arnold cliches, but there's actually a lot of original stuff in this from him as well, which is pretty cool to see. Now, the next movie in my collection, people often wonder, you know, why I have this movie, and it's just a funny comedy. And, you know, I'm a sucker for these kind of films, and that is Death Becomes Her. And I haven't watched it in a while, so I couldn't give you my honest opinion on it right now, but from what I remember and the fond memories I do, just really enjoy it, and really worth checking out if you ever get the chance. Okay, now, a very interesting Tim Burton movie in my collection is The Nightmare Before Christmas. Just such a mind-blowing film, the way it was done at the time. And a lot of people think this is a kids' film, but I'd say it's quite dark for a kids' film. I wouldn't say it's like Return to Oz, but it's kind of in that way, really, if you know what I'm talking about. But worth a watch, nonetheless. Now, in my opinion, the second best biographical film of all time, in my opinion, and that is, and this is because I'm a bit of a martial arts nut, I have to say, but that is Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. If I ever get a chance to get this on Blu-ray, I will, because, and the special features on this are some of the best I've ever seen on a DVD, and really worth watching. I cannot rate this film highly enough, and I think I'm actually going to do a review on it at some point when I get the chance, so keep an eye out for that. Now, of course, we've entered the Bruce Lee domain, if you will. So, of course, I have to mention his classic run of films. Sadly, he didn't get to make that many, but the ones he did are just incredible films, I have to say. And that is The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, otherwise known as The Chinese Connection in the United States, Way of the Dragon, which features Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris. Who wins, you actually decide, but I think it's fair to say Bruce Lee is the only person that could kick Chuck Norris's ass and get away with it. And, in my opinion, his best ever movie. You're going to see a duplicate of this on Blu-ray in a few minutes, or seconds, depending on how long we have. But that is Enter the Dragon. Just a beautiful movie, if there ever was one, that really introduced the world to the martial arts genre. And I just love this movie to death. It's definitely in my top 10 for sure. And of course, now we move on to the movie he sadly never got to finish, but they tried to piece it together. I have yet to actually watch this film again since I first saw it a lot of years ago. But that is Game of Death. And it would have been interesting had he finished this film, but unfortunately what we're left with is a bit of an unfinished mess. I hate to say it, but it is, really. And the last movie in the Bruce Lee collection, strangely, it is a Bruce Lee movie, but it isn't as well. It's more of a tribute to him, and that is Game of Death 2. I have actually yet to watch this film. I have not seen it yet, so I'm hopefully going to check that out while I'm on my week off from work right now, so we'll see. And of course, being a Simpsons fan, I have to have this movie in my DVD collection, and that is The Simpsons Movie. And when I first saw this, I didn't quite like it, but it's one of those films that grows on you the more you see it, so really worth watching if you ever need a laugh on a Friday night. Now, this next movie is one of the most original movies I've ever seen in my life. I unfortunately missed this when it came out in cinemas, but I thankfully got it on Blu-ray one year for my birthday, and that is Looper, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt and, if I can turn the cover right, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis. Just, I cannot praise this movie enough. It is definitely a favourite for sure of modern time, and it's definitely a modern classic to have. Put that there. And the last movie in this pile is Real Steel. One of Hugh Jackman's most underrated films, I have to say. I thoroughly enjoyed this when I saw it. Again, a movie I missed on its theatrical release, but caught it on Blu-ray, and it's a movie I love watching from time to time, so check it out if you haven't already. Okay, now we're moving on to some of the animation department of my DVD and Blu-ray collection. So here we go. We have Despicable Me 1 and 2, because to be honest, after re-watching this film, it's actually worth seeing. You know, and I never thought I'd say that about this movie, but I actually enjoyed it when I actually caught it on DVD with my little nephew. And of course, I have to own this movie. Well, this quadrilogy of movies, which is Shrek 1, 2, 3, which is the worst sequel of the lot, and 4, which is, in my opinion, the second best sequel of the lot after Shrek 2. Now, of course, you can't have a Blu-ray and DVD collection without having this in it, and that is E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Just a beautiful movie. Really worth watching. and well worth checking out if you ever get the chance. It's just fantastic to see. And now moving back on to my animated lot of films. Sorry, I had to do a quick readjustment then. And my second favourite movie trilogy of all time. That is the Toy Story trilogy. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Just brilliant movies. Honestly, in my opinion, Toy Story 3 is the best of the trilogy. Just my opinion. And this next movie is Disney's best movie in years. So really worth watching. Honestly, I cannot stress enough how fantastic this movie is, and this is one I really should review because my subscriber Sam with a Hat has been requesting this for quite a long while. This is Wreck-It Ralph. Just such a lovely movie, and I can't recommend it highly enough, really. And of course, you can't have a bit of a Pixar collection without this next movie, which is Up. You know, I didn't see this film for many years, and then saw Doug Walker's review on it when he was doing Disney December, and was like, yeah, I'm actually going to take a risk watching this, and I'm so thankful I did. Now, these next two movies are technically TV movies. Well, the latter one is basically just a long episode of this particular thing, but I decided to include it in my movie collection anyway, because it is technically a feature-length movie. But I'm going to start off with Doctor Who, the movie, which of course stars Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor and Sylvester McCoy as the 7th, and features the 7th Doctor's regeneration. So it's interesting for that aspect alone, really, but Eric Roberts as the Master, I'm sorry, it just did not work. Now, this next one in my collection isn't technically a movie, but I know a lot of Doctor Who fans consider it a movie, and me personally, I call it a movie-sode, because it's, you know, it's not an episode and it's not a movie, so it's a movie-sode, and that I am copyrighting right now. So this is Doctor Who, The Day of the Doctor, the 50th anniversary special, and just the best episode, movie-sode, whatever you want to call it, of the entire new series run, in my opinion. Now, of course, you know, a lot of people will probably laugh at me for having this movie. I haven't got the sequel yet because I haven't seen it. Because again, I heard very mixed reviews on it, but I do have the recent Muppets movie in my collection, which, you know, it's a pretty cool movie to watch from time to time. And of course, in my collection, I do have, in one box actually, the original Karate Kid trilogy. I don't have the next Karate Kid with Hilary Swank for very good reason. But just even if part 3 of these is pretty terrible, it has to be said. And of course, I do have the remake, which has become very underrated lately, and apparently a sequel's in the works, of the Karate Kid remake, which technically doesn't have any karate in it, but what the hey. Very good performance from Jackie Chan as well in that. Okay, I already mentioned this previously, but I do have The Mask in my collection, which is the very first Jim Carrey movie I saw, and it's a really good one in my opinion, one of his best early performances, and actually features the debut of Cameron Diaz. In fact, my review of this movie is on my old Guitar God 645 channel if you want to check that out. And these next two movies, I hate the sequel with a passion. As you already saw in my Bad Movie Month, the sequel run. But I do have both Tomb Raider movies on DVD. The sequel's terrible, but the first one was a very guilty pleasure depiction of how a video game movie could be done. And the next few movies are actually Blu-rays, so here we go with a bit more of a Blu-ray collection. Starting off with, you already probably saw my review of it, Metallica, Through the Never. interesting film from last year. Very interesting. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, I thought it was really well done and really worth checking out if you ever get the chance. And of course, I did say there was going to be one more duplicate in this collection, and it's my favourite Bruce Lee movie of all time, so I had to get this when it came out on the 40th anniversary edition Blu-ray, but that is Enter the Dragon. Again, the transfer on this is one of the best Blu-rays I've ever seen as well, so definitely get this on Blu-ray. And very first movie I actually reviewed this year, or from this year, and the first to feature my title sequence that I recently created, Las Vegas. Very underrated comedy from this year that I don't think a lot of people saw, but I enjoyed it for what it was. And of course, speaking of comedies, I had to put this in here, Ted. Just the best comedy I saw back in 2012, and still is a real funny movie now, and really worth watching if you ever get the chance. And I'm sorry for saying that a lot, by the way, folks. Now, recently I just got rid of this trilogy on DVD, but I do have it on Blu-ray, and that is Men in Black 1, 2, which is the worst, but unfortunately because it's part of the franchise again, and the one movie that surprised me back in 2012, Men in Black 3. I actually really enjoyed it. A lot of people hated it, I know, but no, I actually enjoyed it myself. And now we're moving on to the last pile, which is really strange to think of now, but here we go. Okay, starting off with the RoboCop trilogy on DVD. Unfortunately, I own the sequel and RoboCop 2 and 3 as part of this, but I wasn't going to leave out those two as part of the franchise, really. And the next quadrilogy in my collection is the Mission Impossible lot, which is a very good Blu-ray transfer, I have to say. And I haven't watched these films in ages, actually. I might give them another watch over the next couple of weeks or so. Now, we're slowly getting towards the end. I'm going to finish off with my my comic book movies, but I'm going to start off with a DVD that you recently saw, which was one of my last reviews actually before I did Guardians of the Galaxy, and that is Man of the Moon. Just a brilliant movie, and it really taught me a lot about the life of Andy Kaufman, who of course we remember from Taxi. And unfortunately, well, it is said that he lost his life to cancer, but the truth is, no one really knows if he's actually still alive or not. But fantastic performance from Jim Carrey as well, because it's one of the very few films, as I said in my review, where you don't actually see Jim Carrey within the first 10 minutes. And another fun Jim Carrey movie, the last one I have in my current collection, and that is Fun with Dick and Jane. Interesting movie. It's kind of a middle-of-the-road movie, I don't know whether I like or hate this one, but worth having, I'd say. And now moving on to the last few Jackie Chan films in my collection. I know I should have put them all together, but at the time of doing this video and sorting these all out, I didn't have time to do that, unfortunately, so I apologise for that. But I'm going to start off with The Medallion, the most underrated Jackie Chan film in my opinion. Really funny, stellar performances, weird villain, but otherwise pretty cool. I'm just going to try and ban these out now as quick as possible because the video's getting close to an hour. But Twin Dragons, Jackie Chan and Jackie Chan. I mean, come on, who doesn't love this movie? Spy Next Door, again, very underrated because it's primarily a kids film, but it's worth watching just for Jackie Chan in this. Again, Jackie Chan's worth watching in anything he does, really. And of course, gorgeous, not just me. Interesting film, although it's really strange that Jackie Chan didn't do his own dubbing in this and they got some American guy to do it. It detracts from the film, unfortunately, you know, but interestingly, Jackie Chan actually get beaten in this movie, or one of his own stunt team nonetheless. And now, of course, you know, finishing off my Jackie Chan collection is Who Am I?, one of my favourites, and Rumble in the Bronx. Another great film. Very dark for Jackie Chan as well, this one, I have to say. And now we move on to the last of my big franchise movies. But I do have the complete adventures of Indiana Jones on DVD. The original trilogy. Have yet to get this collection on Blu-ray. Would love to when I can afford it. And of course I do have Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is a good movie. It's not brilliant, but then again, you know, it harkens back to the original. Yeah, the CGI in it is terrible. Even I'm gonna say that. But me personally, I don't get why people hate this movie so much. But just my opinion. And of course, I have to wrap this up with the DVD collection that everyone has, I'm sure. But I do, to start this off, let's just get the bad ones out the way. I do have the Star Wars prequels, starting with Episode 1, 2, and the best of the prequels in my opinion, and that is Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And to finish off, I do have the original unedited version, untouched versions of the original Star Wars trilogy. So of course that's 4, which is Star Wars to me, not A New Hope. The Empire Strikes Back, the best movie of the franchise, as everyone says. And Return of the Jedi. Now, of course, I could not wrap this up without talking about Kick-Ass. Sorry. Without talking about my comic book movies. Of course, you all knew I was going to wrap this collection up with this. So, you know, here goes. I have Kick-Ass 1 and 2. Very underrated films. The guilty pleasure movie that invented guilty pleasures. Batman the movie. Holy cow, Batman! The Batman movie that got theatrical release but actually flopped. And that is Mask of the Phantasm. And now we move on to the main set of comic book movies I have here. And this is going to wrap up the video now. But I have the complete collection of original Superman movies collected in a tin. And of course, I have the best movie, in my opinion, of last year, Man of Steel on Blu-ray. A lot of people were disappointed with it, I don't know why. And now, of course, moving on to the Batman movies. Of course, I have the original Batman from 1989. Batman Returns. And the next one I'm kind of indifferent about. I like it, but I don't like it. It's really strange with me. But it's a great film to show your kid if you want him to get into the Batman franchise without him like seeing all the violent, gritty stuff that comes later. And that is Batman Forever. And then unfortunately, I have the worst film of all time, which I actually hate with a passion. And that is Batman and Robin. Only have it because it's part of the franchise. And then, of course, moving on to the best Batman trilogy. Well, it's the only Batman trilogy, so to speak. The Christopher Nolan Batman movies. Batman Begins. The Dark Knight. And The Dark Knight Rises. And unfortunately, those are the only DC movies I have. So now I'm going to move on to Marvel, starting with the original Spider-Man trilogy on Blu-ray, even though the third one's a pile of terror, to say the least. The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I'm not sure if I am going to get Amazing Spider-Man 2 on Blu-ray because, to be honest, after really thinking about it, it wasn't that good a movie. But we'll see. I don't know yet. It is part of the franchise. Now, of course, moving on to the Marvel Studios movies, which I have in my collection. And so far, the ones that have been released on Blu-ray, I have them all. So I'm going to try and quickly get through this lot. And that is Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, The First Avenger, and of course, The Avengers. I refuse to call it Avengers Assemble, which is what it's called here in the UK. And as you can see, I have the very rare 2-disc edition that was released here from Sainsbury's here in the UK. And of course now I have most of the Marvel Phase 2 films, which is starting with Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, and just recently, I bought it a few days ago, Captain America the Winter Soldier, which was one of the best movies of this year, I have to say. And that is the Marvel Studios films. Now I have Fox's Marvel movies here that are actually decent, apart from one. No, actually, two. And that is the X-Men Ultimate Collection. Sadly, it's not really that anymore because it's kind of out of date. But it has X-Men 1, 2, 3, Origins, and First Class. And to finish this, I do have the extended edition Blu-ray of The Wolverine. And that is it. That is my entire DVD and Blu-ray collection that I have actually on my shelves right now. So if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to leave me a comment and tell me what your favourite DVD and Blu-ray was in my collection. And I can't believe how long this video was. Thank you for being so patient and watching the whole thing. And as always, feel free to click that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. I make new videos as often as I can. And as always, I shall see you guys on the next one, and take care.